TheActuationZone.com, brought to you by ChangeLeadershipGroup.com.
This is Brett Clay here with Avish Parashar, the author of Improvise to Success. Avish, great to see you today. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Brett. I'm excited to be here.
So Avish, I love your book. We had you on the show, The Actuation Zone, a little while ago. Let's talk about one of your favorite principles of improvisation and applying it to business.
Okay, absolutely. Would you like me to pick a principle, or you want to pick one?
Well, you know, I was looking at it as you're on your way over here, and I saw the one about openness. And that's a really important principle in fact, in change leadership. It's one of the 6 characteristics that I've put in my book for being a change leader. So, of course, that's a very important principle in improvisation and to success in general. So I'd love to know your take on it and how we can maybe illustrate that.
Sure. Well, openness is about just, being open, to be redundant, but it's about not having preset ideas, or if you have a preset idea, it's being open to any change. And so in improv comedy, if we're performing together, you may have an idea and I may have an idea. Now, novice improvisers or ego-driven improvisers, which are probably the same for ego salespeople, ego-driven leaders, they're going to think their ideas are better.
Okay.
So if I'm working with you and I have an idea and I think my idea is better, no matter what you do, I'm going to ignore what you say. I'm going to force you into my idea. And if you're doing the same, that's a disaster.
And that never happens in business.
No, yeah, everyone just... So in openness, what it is I may have an idea. So I'll say, hey, Brett, let's go to the beach. And if you wanted us to be at a bar, then you might try to fight me like, no, I don't want to go to the beach, let's go to a bar. But if you're open, you'll say, okay, yeah, let's do that in an improv context.
All right, let's give it a try.
All right, why don't we do this? Here's an exercise I love to do that really demonstrates this well, is we're going to do a 2-word story.
Okay.
So you'll say 2 words, and I'll say 2 words, and you'll say the next 2 words. And to start us off, why don't you start with once upon, and then I'll say a time, and then we'll just go back and forth. And if one of us says more than 2 words, we're not going to stop. We'll just keep flowing.
Okay, great. So once upon
a time,
I went
to the
garage
and took
a monkey wrench
out of
my toolbox
and started
jacking up the car.
Suddenly a
muffler fell
right on
my foot
and it
broke my toe.
Okay, so not the most exciting story in the world.
This is my first time. Hey,
yeah.
Are you guys proud of me or what? It's my first time in improv comedy.
See, and that was you being open. Now, what you said, neither of us knew where that story was going to go. We knew the first 4 words, once upon a time. After that, whatever came to your mind. Now, sometimes, I've done this for years, so when I say 2 words, I generally have some idea of where I want to go. But not always, right? Sometimes you throw words out. I mean, in order to construct sentences, your mind has to say, okay, here's where we're going. But oftentimes, the 2 words you said are not what I was expecting you to say. And so I have to just go with you.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting in this exercise is, since you said this is your first time doing improv, if I had asked you to just say, Brett, tell me a story, just about anything, it would have been harder for you and it would have been less entertaining than the 2 of us just contributing 2 words at a time.
Right. And you would have been having me sit there stuttering and thinking, what am I going to say next? And
exactly. And so what I love about improv is it's so collaborative, is when the 2 people are open, like we're talking about openness, you don't need to do all the work. And so sometimes we feel so burdened, like dealing with change or sales or leadership, whatever. You feel burdened, like I got to have it all figured out. But if you're willing to be open and collaborate, sometimes you just need to give the 2 words, that first step, see what your team comes back with or see what the prospect comes back with. And then they'll give you a little bit, and then that give and take creates a whole new solution that neither person would have come up with on their own.
Wow, which is the beauty. I always say that 3 people are way smarter as a group than any one of the individuals.
Absolutely, and that comes back to what we talked about in the beginning. That's a principle a lot of people don't accept. They think that leadership is, I'll come up with the ideas and you go implement my idea.
Exactly, right.
Not, hey, here's my idea, what are you going to contribute, and let's make something even better.
Okay, so as you were talking, there was a really important point I wanted to go back to, but now I forgot it. So let's keep improvising.
All right, we'll keep flowing. So, so I mean, openness is really one of the first things I teach. I don't know if we talked about this last. Okay.
I remember what it was. Yes, we're throwing the ball back and forth.
Good, I like it.
So it was that last time we talked in the interview on the actuation zone. By the way, that was my favorite interview. Still, I've had 57 interviews, I think, so far.
Cool. I'm going to go down that list on your website, email every single one of those people.
So one of the things you talked about is, and I think it's all over in your book, is that you don't have to know the complete path to the end to get started. The point about improvising is you talk about how life never ends up working out exactly the way you plan. So you can plan all you want, but you got to get started and just keep improvising so that you end up getting somewhere.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, I don't know if it was an interview or I just happened to say this to somebody else, but if you think back, if everyone thinks back to your life 5 years ago, and when you're sitting there thinking where you'll be in 5 years, and how close is that to where you actually are now? I mean, 5 years, all these companies make 5-year plans, isn't that really after 3 months, your plans tend to go a little bit haywire,
Right.
And sure, if you're conducting a military operation, maybe you need that intense level of planning, lives on the line, it's battle, it's combat. But for business, things change so much. And, if you've read Black Swan by Nassim Taleb.
Okay, no.
The entire book is that the Black Swan is this, to quickly summarize, the Black Swan is something that people believe never existed because they never saw one.
Right.
And so they assumed there was no such thing as a black swan because they only ever saw white swans. Well, then one day someone in New Zealand discovered a black swan. The point being is just because you don't see the change doesn't mean it's not coming.
Right.
And that's where these long plans, everyone says, I was doing so well, if only this hadn't happened. Now, that if only this can always be 100 different things, but what it means is that there's always going to be something you can't plan for.
Right, exactly.
And so these in-depth, it's not a bad idea to have an idea where you want to go in 5 years or down the road.
Just like you're saying, having an idea of where you want the story to go.
Yes, but be willing to go with the flow. The other thing is that if you're too beholden to your plans, you may be missing opportunities for something even better.
Exactly, right.
And so that's a big part of that mentality.
Okay, great. So what other poem would you like to illustrate, or what's the next exercise you typically do to show the application of improvisation?
One of my favorite exercises is this exercise called Yes and it demonstrates the difference between saying yes and versus yes but.
Right.
So this is such a cornerstone improv comedy principle that one of the bigger websites, I don't even know if it still exists, but when I was doing improv 15 years ago and surfing the net a lot, procrastinating.
15 years ago?
Yeah,
wow.
Well, if the internet was there then. Well, it's the website is called Yes and.
Okay.
Yesand.com. And actually the new book I'm working on, which is my plug, is called Say Yes And. It's about this principle.
Very nice.
So to demonstrate this, why don't you and I have a conversation? We're actually going to go grab some food later tonight. Okay. So let's talk about where to go. Why don't you make a suggestion about where we should go? And then after that, we'll just go back and forth with everything starting with yes, but. And then we'll replay it, same conversation with yes, and see what happens.
Okay.
And again, like you said, it's your first time doing improv, so just have some fun with it. Don't stress about it. It's all in good fun. No one but all the viewers are watching.
Exactly. Okay.
So you make a suggestion about where we should go.
Let's go to Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yes, but I didn't bring my passport, so I don't even think I can get into Canada.
And now I say yes,
you
but?
Start with yes, but. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but there's this great restaurant, this Chinese place up in Vancouver that we went to last time we went to Whistler.
Yes, but, I don't like MSG, and I don't really want Chinese food. I'm not feeling it right now.
Yes, but it's really good. I'm telling you, it's really good.
Yes, but it's like a long drive, and I'm only in town for a little while. I don't want to waste that many hours in a car just to get some food.
So I can already tell as I'm trying to do this, I'm up against a wall. Mm-hmm. Saying yes, but does not give me the opportunity to switch paths and try something else. Because when I say yes and then but, I'm committed to that original suggestion I made. Mm-hmm. And how can I feel like I'm in a corner and I can't say, okay, then let's try something else.
Right. So yes, but really becomes an argument. It's just both of us digging our heels.
Exactly. It just forces you into the digging
right.
in.
Exactly. So now we can do the same thing. So why don't you make the same suggestion about going to Vancouver, but this time instead of yes, but, we'll say yes and see where the conversation goes.
All right. Let's go to dinner in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yes, and I've never been to Vancouver, and I hear it's a beautiful city, so I'll get to see even more on this trip.
Yes, and if you have any trouble with your passport, we could go ahead and go somewhere in Bellevue.
Yes, and I didn't even know Bellevue existed till I came out here, and it's a beautiful place. So I'm learning all about geography.
Yes, and I hear there are great restaurants there that are even advertised in airplane magazines like El Gaucho.
Ooh, yes, and since I'm going to be speaking at El Gaucho, it'll be a great time to promote them and build some good teamwork there between me and the client.
Yes, and you could even go and check it out and do some advanced reconnaissance before you speak tomorrow.
Perfect. Okay, so now we can just keep going on, and
right.
This gets a little ridiculous as we both are in such agreement that we start eventually making plans to dominate the world. It's like, yes, and we could save all this money, and this, and we could do this.
Well, it's just a completely different feeling. Now I feel like, wow, we could do anything.
Exactly.
Options are all open.
And I do this, I talk about this in my speeches, but I have to do the exercise because anyone, watching this, you can see the difference. But like you said, you actually feel like, when you say yes, but you actually feel yourself getting defensive.
Oh, exactly. I just felt like,
it's a fake conversation, right? We're not really talking about it. Right. We're not really arguing, but you still feel negative.
Right.
Now, what happens is whenever I do some programs, there's always people who wonder, like, okay, that's great in theory, but you don't. You're not always going to agree with the person. Like, what if I really didn't want to go to Vancouver? Am I supposed to just say
yes
and let's go to Vancouver? No. And the point of this is not that you never say no and that you never say but and that you always agree. With improv, it's about what do you do right there in the moment. And so what's your first response? When someone says something to you or something happens, is your immediate response to say yes and consider the idea, work with the other person, or is your first response to say yes but?
Right, exactly.
And so many people are yes but people. Like most of the world, not most, a lot of the world operates on the principle of I'm going to say no and you're going to have to convince me why I should say yes.
Exactly.
And to perform great improvisation, I think it leads to great sales and leadership and customer service, is your initial response should be yes. And then think about, okay, maybe let's see, is there a reason why I shouldn't do this? And it's a subtle difference.
Now that's the but thinking because, this happens day in and day out in every workplace, in every conversation probably between coworkers and spouses and parents and kids and everything. It's the but mentality, right? And so eliminating but from the vocabulary, or I guess what I wanted to say is, as soon as you say but, you're thinking about objections. You're throwing up objections. Yes. When you say yes and, you're thinking, okay, so then how can I figure out another way? Even if I don't want that, at least I'll figure out a way around it, rather than just throwing up objections.
Well, that's the key is what you just said there, is that you're figuring out another way or way around, because yes but is a binary mindset. It's that it's your way or my way.
Right.
Yes and will help you find the third option. And
right.
third option is often better. It's like the two-word story we're talking about, where you'll come up with this new idea that you would not have come with alone. Yes and is what spins you to the third option, which is really powerful. And I was going to say something else, now I forgot to. So we're just making this up as we go along.
Well, exactly. So that's what
I remember what I was going to say.
All right, great.
So yes, but we talk about focusing on problems versus solutions, or how you should. Yes, but keeps you 100% fixated on the problem.
Right.
And
all the objections.
And all the objections. Yes, and spins you to finding a solution. And so if you find yourself saying yes, but, whether it's literally or just in spirit, that's the first thing I teach people is to notice it. Notice when you're doing it so you can train yourself to think, all right, step back, I'm saying yes, but how can I say yes and in this situation? And,
very nice.
It takes time to become second nature, but even if you do it consciously, it's very powerful.
Well, I find that the best way to change your behavior is to try to eliminate but from your vocabulary. I can't tell you how many conversations I have on a daily basis, and sometimes I want to say but, and I just go, and if I say it, I'm saying, I'm sorry I used the but word, let me start again. And I just force myself. As soon as you just eliminate that word from vocabulary, it's the best way. It forces you to do the end.
Yeah. If you can get rid of it or minimize it, or what I tell people to do is, I'm not as extreme because then they don't believe me that it's possible or realistic. I say let's move it to the end of the conversation, not the beginning. In other words, if we're in a conversation, if I say yes and to you for a while and we come up, and at the end of the day I say, you know what? We talked about this, your suggestion, your proposal, whatever. It's a good idea.
And you still
you can
don't
change
have
the
to say
That's
but.
true. You can change the. I'm also talking literal versus mental. So at the end, I don't have to say the word but at some point you're gonna have to say no, right? And so it's if you say no up front.
You could say and considering all the options, looks like this option is the best. Yes. You don't have to say but considering all the options. And as soon as you say but, what's happening? digging in again.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true. You're creating an adversarial relationship anytime you use the word but. So as much as you can, eliminate it from your vocabulary.
Hey, so another thing I wanted to talk to you about is anxiety. Anxiety is one of the 6 characteristics, 6 factors that I talk about of change leadership. And of course, it's an inverse relationship. The more anxious you have, the more emotional baggage, insecurities, and all that kind of stuff you carry around, needless to say, the more difficult you find it to take action and make a change.
Right.
So, and I just was at the Brian Tracy Power of Personal Achievement seminar the last several days, and one would argue that one of the fundamental threads across all of his content in his seminar was alleviating people's anxieties. So I know you've got some really powerful things to say about anxiety and how improvisation can help with that.
Yeah, well, one of the things, one of the primary tenets, whenever I teach people improv, I say there's 2 mentalities. There's 2 mentalities you have to improvising with anything. The first is having fun and being playful, which, kind of demonstrating here, and that's obvious. The second, though, is being willing to fail, which is when you step out on stage in an improv comedy show, you have no idea what you're going to say, what your partner's going to say, what the audience, there's so many variables, right? And there are a lot of people who come up to you after a show, and they're just like, I could never do that because it's so anxiety-filled. And so the first step is being willing to fail.
Okay.
And I got this is my martial arts background coming in now.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There's a great book called A Book of 5 Rings. It's a strategy book, but in there it's written by a 16th century or 17th century samurai, and it had this one line in there which resonated with me, which was that the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death, which is kind of morbid, but the the principle being, when a samurai would go into battle, it's a very real possibility they would die. The ones that were afraid of death would be more likely to die because half of their focus is on dying and half is on fighting.
Right.
The one who accepted as a possibility can then put it aside and stop focusing on it.
Right.
Now, I'll admit to you, I say this sometimes to like law of attraction type people, and they flip out on me because they're like, no.
You're going to attract death.
Yeah, you get what you focus on. I'm like, no, you don't focus or dwell on the possibility of failure. But so, yeah, I've been speaking for a while now, and so I'm pretty comfortable getting on stage. But once in a while, if it's a really big thing or a big person's in the audience or so early on, you start to get that anxiety, which is a big fear for a lot of people. And what I started doing is self-talk is if I start to feel those nerves come up, I say, okay, yeah, you might mess this up. That's a possibility. And if you do, life will go on. You move on. Okay, fine. Boom.
Fine,
put it aside.
boom.
And that's all. I don't dwell on it. But
Come over here a little.
Oh, hello. And so then you put it aside, and now you're focusing. And once you really embrace that, you know what, messing up is not the worst thing in the world. And in fact, in my improv comedy experience, sometimes the best material comes from your mistakes.
Right, and I also like the idea that with improv, because the whole premise is that your course of action does not have to be predetermined. In fact, it should not be predetermined because you should adapt as things change.
Yes.
And so if you know that you're going down a path, you know that you can always look for different options, and you have no idea how things will turn out. And here's where the positive mental attitude comes in.
Yeah.
If you just have the idea that, well, one way or the other, it'll turn out fine. You just get going, and you don't have to be anxious because you know things will change, and hopefully for the better.
Well, this brings up 2 more points that'll help people with anxiety. I think when I started, I said there was 2, so I've now added a third. After you've inspired me, you made me think of something. So the second thing that I wanted to say was that access to your creative abilities. One of the reasons you get anxiety is you're afraid things will go wrong because you have a set plan, and if things go off that plan, you lack the confidence that you'll be able to improvise and flow.
Okay.
So the better you are at improvising, the better you are at being creative, the more confident you are because you're like, okay, even if things don't go as planned, yeah, I'll still figure it out.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
And what I like about that versus what we were both saying before was it'll be okay versus this version, which is I'll make it okay.
Exactly right. It's more empowering.
Yeah, it's like I have the creative ability. I mean, so whenever I get on stage, or especially for an improv comedy show, even if I'm getting a little nervous, I'm like, you know what? Whatever happens, I know it's going to be good. Like, I'm not going to, and maybe it won't be as brilliant as I want it to be, but like worst cases, it's still going to be good. It's not going to mess up that bad because there's nothing that can happen that I can't roll with. It's a very empowering place to be. And the third one, and this is huge when it comes to improv, and it's one I'm just starting to get into applying it to business and life.
Okay.
Is that you don't need to be brilliant.
Okay.
The best improvisers, like when we do a scene or something, it's not about coming up with a brilliant comedic idea. It's about starting really basic and then building up to something funny.
Okay.
The worst.
In project management, we call that progressive elaboration.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
just start with something basic, and as I think of it as kind of like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
You start with a twig.
Just a frame or a little, even less than a frame.
And you just keep adding one little thing, and as you go along, it just gets better and more fleshed out and more thorough.
And I'm getting into also, so I have an IT background as well. I'm Indian. And I got a friend who's into video game development now, so he's talking to me about this idea of agile software development.
Right.
Which is where you basically work like mad for 2 weeks just to complete something.
Right.
And then you iterate, as opposed to more traditional program, which is where you map the whole structure.
Exactly, right.
And so realize you don't have to be, and this comes, I've been doing a lot more writing over the last year or two, both fiction and nonfiction. And I don't want to swear, but there's a writer in a book called Bird by Bird where she talks about having really bad first drafts. She uses stronger language.
Okay.
But she's like, give yourself permission to write a bad first draft.
Right.
And so it doesn't need to be brilliant. That's what lets your creativity flow. So when it comes back to anxiety and confidence, when you remove that pressure of yourself from being brilliant, ironically, the brilliance emerges.
Okay,
because you just let yourself say, you know what, I'm just going to start and see what happens. And so it's that confidence, being able to see what happens and all that stuff.
Very nice. Okay, so how about one last exercise to finish our session off?
Okay. Well, let's see. Would you like a... all right, well, let's do a fun one. This is going to be challenging, but that's what makes it fun.
Okay.
Okay. So, and why don't we just play the game, and then we can talk about what it is, what I use to demonstrate it for.
Okay.
So, we're gonna do another story. The difference here is that you're gonna start telling the story, and when you mess up, and I'll explain what that means, then I'll pick up the story where you left off and keep going until I mess up, and so we'll basically be trading off telling the story.
Okay.
Now, here's the rules. This is a game called Story Without the Letter. So what that means is we're going to have one letter of the alphabet that we are not allowed to use in any word we say.
Okay.
It can't be at the start, in the middle, or at the end.
Woo,
Nowhere
baby.
in the word.
Okay. And I'll bet you've picked out the perfect letter.
I got the perfect letter, yeah.
Like A or something.
Yeah. Well, we don't do vowels because that's a little crazy.
Okay.
But if you start, if you use a word that has that letter in it, I'll clap or I'll say, oh, I'll ding you,
right.
And then I'll start telling it. And then if I use a word that has a letter, then we'll switch back, and so then you'll take control back of the story.
Okay, so this really means you have to be very present in this story
Yes.
to be looking for this.
And you have to go fast. So if either of us starts talking really slow, overthinking, then we'll ding the person and switch. So It's about trying to sound as normal as possible.
Okay, interesting, because one of the things that we're taught as speakers is it's okay slowing down. In fact, a lot of times we speak too fast and we speak too loud. And
Yes.
in fact, it's better if we just give ourselves time to think, because a lot of people fill that time with and
Yes.
all the other bad things.
Well,
So
in
interesting,
this-
here you're going to go as fast as you can.
Yeah, it's still going to be slower than normal speech for most people.
Okay.
So I've used this exercise. I've actually used this exercise when doing presentation skills training to slow a person down.
Oh, okay.
Because it does force you to think about every word. What I'm saying is if you start talking like, there is a...
And counting every letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when we'll ding. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's not about speaking at a New York City pace.
Okay. Okay.
So why don't you start telling us a story? Just, it can be anything to start with once upon a time.
Okay.
And no S's. We're not going to use the letter S in any word we say.
Okay.
And then just do your best. Again, we're having fun, willing to fail, and just having a good time here.
Okay, so once upon a time, I went to the beach and played in the glass.
Glass. While on the beach, I happened to find a coin that dated back to the year when Columbus.
And on that coin was
on that coin happened to be the face of a
face. Oh no, that's a C. So you're still good to go. The face.
The face of a king from another land who wanted to invade the earth that we live on, and I knew that I had to stop.
And as he was,
as
was.
Right. Yeah, so, great job, Boo. By the way, that's an excellent job. If there's an audience here, I would applaud for you.
Virtual audience, thank you.
Virtual audience, thank you. Now, fun game. Now, good job. It's not an easy game because, this is a performance level game. The other two we've done were drills. This is when I used to open shows with my group. So it's good. Great job.
Well, I only got in one word before I messed up. You were the one that had the. Well, you could say like 5 or 10 words.
Well, there's so many lessons applied to this. You've already said one about being present. So you can see, even though we were going as fast as we could, it was still fairly normal pace. So I did a skills workshop where this one speaker, he was constantly talk way too fast. And so I said, do me a favor, try not to use the letter P. If you do, it's okay, we're not going to stop you, but just do your best to not use any words. And it just really forced him to, and this is when, from a speaking standpoint, like you said, sometimes our mind just goes and we're not paying attention to the words we're using.
Right, exactly.
So this actually originated as an exercise to get improvisers to be more present.
Okay.
So that's one lesson.
Yeah, because the whole present thing is huge. It seems like, when we talk about ways to memorize things, you use mnemonics or visual cues to trigger your brain. This seems like a great trick to really force you into the conversation so that you are completely present in every word and every letter of what the person's saying. It's a great force. It's a vehicle to force you to do that. To be present.
Yeah. And then if you practice this, as you said, I'm pretty good at this because I've been doing it for years. And so you're able to stay present but switch quickly, which is what I keep moving away. It's what improv is all about, right? It's about having a plan but being able to switch and change direction. This also comes back to what we talked about being willing to fail. Because when this game is fun for the audience is when a person tries to speak in normal sounding English and messes up, or when they try to speak in normal English and they manage to get out a long sentence. Without, the audience is like, wow, that was great. When the audience doesn't like it is when the person, which neither of us did, but when they talk slow and... Because it's painful. It's like watching a stand-up comedian bomb. So
it's basically also about failing fast?
Yeah, it's about failing fast. It's how you fail. We used to, that was a rule when you're performing this, is when you mess up with joy. Like, be like, act it up, like have fun with it. But if you act like you're really upset at yourself for messing up, the audience gets really uncomfortable. So it's failing fast, it's failing with fun.
It ruins the fun, right.
And it's realizing that the metaphor from this game is that the game works when you do your best and succeed, or when you do your best and fail. The game doesn't work when you get so caught up in trying to do it right that you're not really doing anything. And
very good lesson for life and for business.
Yeah, I love that lesson. It's just go out there and do your best, and you'll still succeed even if you fail.
And you'll do whatever you do, and you'll improve on it going forward.
Right. Yeah. That's failing forward, failing fast. It's such a cool exercise to teach all those things.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming by today, Avish. It's been a very pleasure.
Cool. I had a lot of fun. This is great. You definitely got the improv in you. So yeah.
Well, one of these days I commit to you. Actually, I think I might have said that on our last interview that I committed I was going to take an improv class. I will do it. It's just a question of when.
Hey, no problem. I understand.
Thanks, Avish.
Thank you.
Great
Brett.
seeing you.
You too.
Brett and Avish signing off.
TheActuationZone.com, brought to you by ChangeLeadershipGroup.com. Copyright 2010, Brett Clay, all rights reserved.